You've been told if you keep your head down, work hard, and prove yourself, recognition, promotions, and opportunities will come. But let's be honest, that's just not true. This is Lead Without Limits, a podcast for professionals in multifamily and beyond who are ready to stop second-guessing themselves. Because leadership isn't just about titles or tactical skills. Yes, we'll cover those here, but real leadership starts from within. It's about changing the beliefs and behaviors that have kept you playing small and rewiring the thought patterns holding you back. I'm Shanenn Bryant, a confidence and pattern expert, and this is the space where we talk real growth, real change, and maybe have a little workday humor along the way. This episode is brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, delivering the latest news, ideas, and inspiration across the multifamily sector. If you're ready to lead without fear, lead without doubt, and lead without limits, you're in the right place. Let's get started. This week, we're talking about the F word. No, not what you think, but it did get me curious, like where the mother of the F words came from, or if there was any information out there or history on the word. So I did a little research. There were a couple things that popped up. There was something, a medieval nickname from like 1310, where it meant something of someone's lack of experience. The first dictionary appearance was in 1598. But the most interesting thing that I found was there was some research that said that swearing can have a pain relieving effect. There was actually a study that showed that participants who swore could tolerate pain longer than those who didn't. So while the F word might be taboo in some settings, it appears to have some unexpected benefits. So the next time you stub your toe on the corner of that bed frame and you swear like a sailor, you're forgiven. You're just managing the pain. But let's talk about the real reason and the real F word that we're here to focus on today, and that is feedback. You know that feeling you get when somebody gives you feedback, even the well-intended feedback, and it just hits you wrong. It just doesn't feel good. And it sends you into this spiral and you start questioning everything about yourself. Your confidence tanks. You can feel your heart rate go up and you're a little bit sick at your stomach. And then you start replaying the entire conversation, everything that they said. You start replaying it in your head and you're thinking about it in 100 different ways. I remember a time that I got some feedback and it was from a peer. It wasn't even from my supervisor. And they said something like, in the next meeting, let's start with the most important thing first. That was it. That's all they said. Super simple, right? But the moment I heard it, my brain just ran with it. I immediately started thinking things like, oh, they think that I ramble too much, or I'm not a strong communicator. Everybody thinks I'm disorganized. What I was talking about wasn't important to everybody else. Then the defensiveness set in. Well, what's important to you might not be what's important to everybody else. And then came the emotional spiral where I just started over prepping for every single meeting. I was obsessed with every slide. I second guessed my talking points, my agenda, all because of that one comment. But here's the thing. That wasn't what they said. They didn't say that I'm ineffective or that people were tuning out or that I wasn't good at my job. What they said was, let's start the next meeting with the most important thing first, period. But what I did, what we do so often, is fill in the blanks with a whole narrative rooted in self-doubt, insecurity, and old stories that we tell about ourselves. And I'm not alone in this. I know you're not alone in this. There's actually a principle in communication research. I think Brene Brown even talks about it in some of her work, but it's this 85-15 rule. only about 15% of what makes feedback painful for us is the actual feedback itself. The other 85% is the story that you make up about it. Our stories are in our struggle. Most of the pain that we feel around feedback, it doesn't come from what the person said. It comes from what we think it means, what we think it means about ourselves. And maybe there was a time that somebody was being negative in their feedback. They were coming more from, being critical than being constructive. But it's still about the stories that we tell ourselves, because if they were being negative, if they were being just critical, it caused us pain because we believed the negative that they were saying. We make it personal. We assign meaning to it. We link it to our worth, our capability, our identity. I have a certification in integrated attachment theory from the Personal Development School, and they teach and focus on these common core wounds or core beliefs that most of us as humans have that we tell ourselves. And a lot of these stories, these core beliefs show up even when we get the slightest bit of feedback. Things like, I'm not good enough, I'm defective, I don't belong, I'm rejected, I am bad, I'm weak, I am disliked, I'm disrespectful. Any of that sound familiar? This is the part of leadership and honestly being human that people don't talk about enough. We're taught how to give feedback, but we're rarely taught how to receive feedback without the self-destruction. So how do we shift this? How do we stop making feedback a full-on identity crisis? Here's a practice I'm going to share with you that I use myself and I teach inside my coaching work. It's called SIT, the SIT practice, SIT, because that's exactly what we need to do when we get feedback that hits us hard. Sit with it before we spiral from it. It's 3 simple steps. It's a 3-step practice that's going to help you pause, notice what's really going on, and give you ways to respond versus having that reactivity and not feeling good about it. And of course, like any good leadership practice, it's not about being perfect. It's about building the muscle and continuing to use it. The more you use it, the less that feedback is going to feel like a threat. And the more it's going to become an actual tool, how feedback is intended to be. It's supposed to help you grow. So this 3-step practice is SIT, as I mentioned, stop, identify, and think. So the first one, of course, is stop. This is about creating a pause, a gap between getting the feedback and your reaction to the feedback. Because if we don't stop, we spiral. We start defending ourselves, we're over-explaining, we withdraw, we shut down, and all of that can happen super fast. So in this first moment, do nothing. Don't respond, don't rationalize, don't replay, just stop. Take a breath, let your nervous system catch up with the moment. Because when we get feedback, when we receive feedback from someone, especially if it's unexpected or it's critical feedback, our bodies can perceive it as an actual threat. It triggers our sympathetic nervous system, also known as fight or flight response. You've probably heard that. When this is triggered, a lot of other things happen inside your body. Your heart rate increases because it thinks that you need to prepare your body to respond to danger, to a threat. It enhances your oxygen intake for immediate action because remember, your body doesn't know that these are just words that you just got feedback from someone. It thinks, or it takes it on as a threat. It assumes that you're going to have to get physical. You might have to run. And it releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to get you more alert. But what happens when all of that's going on in your body it impairs your thinking. These changes really cloud your judgment and it makes it challenging to process that feedback objectively. It just hits on our triggers, those core wounds, and we kind of explode from there. So on a side note, if you're a supervisor, this is exactly why it's important to incorporate some type of feedback in your one-on-ones that you're having with your direct reports. So hopefully you're having weekly one-on-ones with your employees, but this giving them feedback each week, it gets them used to getting feedback. They're going to come to expect that I'm most likely going to get some type of feedback, and it removes that uncertainty and that shock of the unexpected. So I just want to bring that up. If you are a supervisor, make sure that you're incorporating feedback into your meetings with your employees. So back to the stop. It's why pausing and breathing when you receive feedback is necessary, especially when you're first learning to receive feedback in a healthy way. This is a practice and it may take a few times. So again, getting consistent feedback and being able to practice, even better. To counteract this stress response of your nervous system, taking slow, deep breaths are so important. One of my favorites is box breathing, but you can look up different breathing techniques. You can pick the one, that works best for you, that you feel like works best to calm yourself down, even if it's just a little bit. Because the moment you feel that hot flush of emotion or shame, or where you start to feel triggered, you start to feel emotional, stop. Don't react. Take a beat, literally take a breath. Your nervous system just needs it needs a second to regulate. So that's stop. The next one in sit is I, identify. And this is a big one. This is where a lot of the emotions come from. So we want to look at what's actually going on inside of us. And the best way to do that, you could ask yourself, what am I making this mean? What am I making this mean about me? Try to catch that story before it snowballs. Remember earlier in the episode when we talked about those core identity stories? So that feedback is probably triggering one of those old stories. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. I don't belong. I'm being disrespected. They don't like me. I'm not competent. I always mess things up. But these stories aren't facts. They're just old patterns. And our stories and old patterns that we made up about ourselves, they love to latch onto feedback like Velcro. So this is the step where you can spot them before they take over. When we identify it, then you can ask yourself, is this about what was actually said or what I'm afraid it meant, what I'm making it mean? Because typically most of that pain isn't coming from the feedback itself. Remember, that's only 15%. It's coming from the meaning that we're assigning it. And once we realize that, we can stop spiraling and actually deal with what was said, not what we made it mean. We can deal with what was said. We can take action on the feedback and make some improvements rather than just making us feel like complete dog food trash for the next week or two. So that's I in sit, identify. The last one then is think. So now that we've identified what story we maybe most likely are telling ourselves about feedback or the story that the feedback triggered and how it's made you feel, this step is about getting out of the swirl, getting out of the spiral and into just the facts. Think about what was actually said. Literally, what were the words that were said? This is where you can bring your brain back online. You can separate what was said from what you added to it, and then you've got the real raw data. And it might be those words literally could be you interrupted a few times during the meeting. Okay, I can work on that. Maybe the words were exactly like mine. The next time we have a meeting, we probably want to start with the most important things first. That's the real information that allows us to actually then dig in. How do I improve? That gives us information that we can work with and we can take action on. So this step is about stepping back and asking, what's actually true here? Is there any part of this that I can use to help me grow? What clarifying questions could I ask instead of filling in the blanks? This is really the part where you can make a big pivot and move from that spiraling part into actions. It's not about having to fix your emotions. It's really about choosing your response based on the actual data, the true information, not your fear, not your old wounds, not your internal narrative on full blast. None of that. And when you get good at this, you stop treating feedback like it's a verdict. You can then use feedback and say, I love it. Give me more feedback. I use this as a tool. We know that feedback accelerates our growth. So you can start using it like the tool it was meant to be. All right, next week, we're going to continue the conversation with the F word part 2, and it's all about giving feedback. So if giving feedback also makes you nervous, if you avoid it, or you're overly apologetic when you give it, don't miss next week's episode. I'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead Without Limits and investing in what matters, you. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague who might benefit as well. This podcast is brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living. I hope this moved you one step closer to lead without fear, lead without doubt, and lead without limits.